House to the big house. You still stand by that prophecy?
I made a pledge. I mean this sincerely. I made a pledge. We hold these truths to be self-evident. These words are the basis for the American creed. Equality, equity, fairness, decency. America didn't live up to that promise for most of the people at the time. The people of color, for women. But we were born of an idea that every single solitary person, given half a chance, no matter where they're from, given half a chance, there's not a single thing they cannot do if they work
this
at it.
decision by this judge is going to embolden people like Lori Loughlin and the other 39 defendants charged to fight these things. And the judge kind of made a common sense decision. He said, look, there really isn't a victim here.
There's a singular word. We hold these truths self-evident. We, the people, both. And we got to remember this. Both were statements of a common purpose. A common purpose.
You know there's serious work that has to be done. But it's not being done by a president who wakes up in the middle of the night and wages a war on Twitter, or like the guy in the whistle back there. Wonder whose campaign he's with. While he's lashing out at his political opponents, obsessing over his personal grievances. Look, here's the most important thing to remember. The rest of the world ain't waiting.
You know there's serious work that has to be done. But it's not being done by a president who wakes up in the middle of the night.
You wouldn't be here. You know there's serious work that has to be done.
We know that the American people cannot
But it's not being done by a
afford 4
president
more
who
years
wakes up in
of
the
the
middle of
same
the night
failed policies
and
and the
wages
same
a war
old
on Twitter, or like the guy
politics
in
in
the whistle.
Washington. We know that the time for change has come. A leader who sees clearly the challenges facing America in a changing world, with our security and standing set back by 8 years of a failed foreign policy. A leader.
Why has this been so hard for Congress? What has been the holdup for Congress on this issue?
Well, the holdup has historically
Obama went to
been,
the Democratic convention assured of the nomination. He was about to make history as the first African-American president.
Terror or horror after the attacks.
Who shares my vision of an open government that calls all citizens, Democrats, Republicans, and independents, to a common purpose. Above all, I searched for a leader who is ready to step in and be president.
It's a New Yorker thing. After that first rush of excitement or terror or horror after the attacks, it faded a little bit and sort of was seen as a regional issue. But that's really faded because people from all over the country came, and people from all over the country are getting sick. So that has changed, and now it's actually moving a little bit better than it has in the past, because here we are a year and a half before the expiration of the fund. They realize it's running out of money, and the House is in the process of acting, which is much better than it was in the previous go-rounds.
You said, I think a lot of people will be surprised to know that the people affected, it's a population of tens of thousands of Americans who rely on this fund either now or in the future. What other states are we talking about? We're not just talking about New York. Where are these people from?
They're from 433 out of 435 congressional districts. And that number sometimes changes because people move, right? But like, for instance, in Texas, there are some 700 people who applied for the fund. And I believe it's around...
In Texas?
In Texas. And I believe it's around 400, I'd have to double check, but who are actually eligible for some form of compensation. You just go around the country, you'll find somebody. Florida has thousands of people because so many New Yorkers and New Jersey residents moved there.
Oh, and then they responded on 9/11.
Correct.
There, Pennsylvania, or at the Pentagon.
Yeah, and the Pentagon, one of the advocates, John Field, was here the day before that hearing with Jon Stewart. doing outreach for the government, and he found 15 people with cancer who will probably qualify for the fund.
Just this week?
Just this week in Virginia.
To wrap this up, I think now the eyes are moving to the Senate. The House is expected to pass this bill this month. Senator McConnell said he expects to do something compassionate, as they have in the past, but he hasn't scheduled this bill. Is the pressure enough now, you think, to move this through the Senate quickly?
No, I don't think it's quite enough yet. Mitch McConnell has Kentucky to worry about, and Kentucky doesn't have that many responders, and there are other issues. But at the other sort of side of the equation, he's up for re-election, and he might have a strong challenger, so perhaps he won't want to have that hanging out there. Then we'll see.
We'll continue to watch, and thank you for all your coverage.
Joe Biden is that rare mix. For decades, he's brought change to Washington, but Washington hasn't changed him. He's an expert on foreign policy whose heart and values are firmly rooted in the middle
Joe,
class.
the last time that you were on was
For American cops and firefighters.
time for me.
He is uniquely suited.
So much comfort on air when we were talking about my father's cancer diagnosis. Your son Bo died of the same cancer.
Now, I could stand here and recite a list of Senator Biden's achievements because he is one of the finest public servants of our time.
Gave Bo courage.
Who could have said no to Renee Dunbar, a veteran police officer who inhaled toxic material to ground zero and died in 2009 as a result of it? Who could have said no to Daniel Conroy, a 19-year veteran of the New York City Police Department, who also inhaled toxic fumes?
My word was John. Your dad, you may remember when you were a little kid, your dad took care of my Bo. Your dad, when he was a mill aide working with me, became friends with Bo. And Bo talked about your dad's courage, not about illness, but about his courage.
Working in a toxic environment at Ground Zero, who could possibly say no to them?
There have been so many acts of heroism and self-sacrifice.
Cleaning boilers to
The firefighters who gave their lives, the firefighters who worked day and night, the volunteers who gone in there.
The uncommon courage of first responders called to duty on that day.
With the in-laws and working weekends to make ends meet. But he raised his family with a strong commitment to work and to family.
Zero, the Pentagon, and that Pennsylvania field continue to serve as reminders of all that is good and true in the human spirit.
We watched as average Americans, finding extraordinary courage, became heroes. Firefighters, police officers.
That in America you can make it if you try. Those are the core values that Joe Biden has carried with him to this day. And even though Joe Sr. is not with us, I know that he is proud of Joe today. It might be hard to believe when you hear him talk now, but as a child, Joe Biden had a terrible stutter. They called him Biden. But he picked himself up, and he worked harder than the other guy, and got elected to the Senate. A young man with a family and a seemingly limitless future. And then tragedy struck. Joe's wife, Nelia, and their little girl, Naomi, were killed in a car accident. And their two boys were badly hurt. When Joe was sworn in as a senator, there was no ceremony in the Capitol. Instead, he was standing by his sons in the hospital room where they were recovering. He was 30 years old. You know, tragedy tests us. It tests our fortitude, and it tests our faith. And here's how Joe Biden responded.
It's not just on air. I call you the grief whisperer. I love you so much. I've called you more times than I'm sure people could probably imagine, because you really understand grief and pain in a way that I've never met anybody else in life like it. Does death ever get easier?
And now I got one. And it's going to teach me how to do it.
I think this decision by this judge is going to embolden people like Lori Loughlin and the other 39 defendants charged to fight these things. And the judge kind of made a common sense decision. He said, look, there really isn't a victim here.